Well, class, today we're going to be talking about identity. And I think what's really interesting about identity is that it actually plays a role in such a variety of areas of our lives, whether we realize it or not. It's not simply a case of me standing up and saying, my name is Andrew Rattigan. And to start it off, I'm actually going to give a book recommendation because that'll give people a great understanding of how we think as human beings. So, to preface this, as human beings, we assume we are at the pinnacle of creation, of how we've adapted, how we've evolved, and we think we're impervious to stressors, but also maybe triggers that we think are making decisions without us knowing or realizing. And what Rory Sutherland does, he's in Ogilvy, and it's a very, very well known marketing and advertising company. And the book is called Alchemy. And if anyone was going to listen to this, I would say buy the book and listen to him because he's phenomenal at narrating it. He's not one of those audible style narrators or authors where as soon as he starts speaking, he ruins the book. He doesn't. He actually adds to it, and it's fantastic. And it talks about psychologic. And when you think of when we buy anything, there is a huge identity attached to it, but we mightn't necessarily verbalize that or realize why we're doing something. So when you buy a pair of shoes, where you get your coffee, all of these things are precursors to you signaling part of your identity to society, your peers, your locale, as well as all the different pieces of information that you've accumulated over your lifetime. So if you imagine there, even let's just take coffee as an example. You will take someone who absolutely loves their coffee, and for someone to go to Starbucks and go for an orange mocha frappuccino is considered an absolute no-no. And you'll have someone else that could justify spending twice the amount of Starbucks for a quarter of the coffee because they perceive the flavor to be better, the quality to be better, and may potentially the bragging rights to be better. And you attach that to anything in life and it actually comes out the same. You imagine a gym membership, every gym has a set of dumbbells. Some of them are a little bit more expensive than others, but there is a subtlety to it. And when you look at property and why people do things, there is an inherent identity as part of it. It's not just shelter. So it's not just simply someone who meekly or humbly says, well, it's somewhere to live. We've got 3 bedrooms and that's all we need. It'll be plenty for us. This isn't Little House on the Prairie. So that's been said, cards on the table. I think when you look at the role of why we justify things, I find it very interesting because I do the same thing. You buy something and you'll justify why. Someone compliments you on something and you might say that it was on sale, or you play it down knowing full well that that was the desired reaction you wanted. And when you look at property, you could have someone, I think there's a few different markers that you're going to notice when it comes to how people think and how they process why they're going to buy something. And I think one of the key ones that people who are listening to this may notice is, when you go to someone's house where you're popping over and they spend almost a decade apologizing for either the state of the property as they perceive it, the location. It could be that they got in at the wrong time, but they'll tell you this over and over again. So it's almost like a story that they're telling themselves and also telling you and anyone else who's going to listen. When you think of property as being shelter, that has nothing to do with the fact that they live in a home that is safe. It probably is a great lifestyle. It gives them everything they need, all things considered. But when you bring in the external role of people, that's when people start to justify, analyze, and over explain why it is they did something or why they couldn't do something else. And I find it fascinating because no one is buying the property for you. And this doesn't matter where you go, by the way. This isn't about buying somewhere for 100,000 and somewhere for 100 million. You could have people that are on a similar street and they may have had aspirations for a certain outlook, orientation, whatever it may be. It doesn't matter. Or they may have bought something now with the idea or hope that they'll buy something else in time to come. But instead of adapting, growing, and maybe either changing or accepting what's happening, whether they do choose to stay or do choose to move on, there tends to be a narrative. And that narrative is all about your identity and how you're perceived. And that's that real pack style mentality of when people meet you, they kind of layer into what role you will play. So are you an alpha, beta? Are you a threat? Are you useful? And I think what's interesting when you look at the fact that we've advanced so much when it comes to our way of living. So we've got technology, all these things that have enhanced our lives, but there is still this old world thinking or this kind of biology within us that is ancient, where it's still identity and what that means. And when you're assessing the different places that you're looking at, it's important that you look at it through the lens of what you want from life, not what you perceive someone else is going to want. Because beyond the initial opening the door, the reality is no one cares. I think one of the really best lessons I learned when people talk about, how you overthink things or what you do to make other people happy or in the hopes of appeasing other people is you'd be fascinated to think of how little people think about you. And that's not being cruel. That's actually quite freeing, because when you're making a decision to buy a property, it's about you. It's about your family if you have one. It's about your lifestyle and what matters most. And I think when it comes to this newsletter, I just wanted to tackle that role of identity, what it means, a few questions to ask yourself, and maybe it'll get you thinking as to what your motivations are, why you're doing things, what you're doing them for, who you're doing them for. And in a busy market, when supply is tight, it can be challenging out there to feel like you're being seen, that you think you're going to make progress. And sometimes you just feel like you just can't get that momentum. Little things like this can get you thinking as to why you're doing it. I'm not going to buy a sauna for my house in the hopes that someone drops by because they like the sauna. If I want to buy a sauna, I'm going to get it for myself. You can tell I like saunas. But the concept is the exact same. You got to do it for you. You got to do it for the right reasons. And it's important to ask yourselves those questions as to why you're doing something, why you're apologizing for it, if you are, because we all know someone who does. I should have done this, I could have done that. Excuse the house, it's been a mess for a decade. Forget the noise. You got to do it for you. So take a look at it. I hope you find value in it. And that name of that book again, which I would implore anyone to buy, is Alchemy by Rory Sutherland. And again, like I said, buy the normal actual written book and buy the audiobook, because together they are sublime. Have a great weekend.